Welcome to another edition of Tactical Tips brought to you by the Independent Dealer Podcast and our good buddies at Neo. Neo is the only way for, in my opinion, a buy here, pay here store to underwrite their deals properly. You can't just throw spaghetti on the wall and expect to have it cooked, right? So we got to use a program. We got to use real data, and Neo has that data. They pull all that data together from many different sources, and they help us grade the paper we're about to write. So if you're looking for a way to write better paper and sell more cars, Neo is the person you should call. Give them a call. So we've been talking about goal setting and forecasting and all these things for the first 2-3 weeks of the year. Today we're going to talk more about projections. And projections is probably something you should have done earlier, but we're going to talk about them today. So one, the difference between projections and goals is that projections use historical data to be produced, right? Goals, you can just say, hey, I want to sell 40 cars next month. Well, if your historical data doesn't say you're going to do that, you might get frustrated. So if we look at the projections that we've done for years and years and years, we'll find out that, hey, if we sold 25 cars last January, it's very likely we're going to sell 25 cars this January, unless you've done something to change that projection. Maybe you're spending more on advertising. Maybe you have more inventory, whatever it may be. But use historical data to produce your projections. Then you can use your projections to produce your goals. So number two, use projections to build your budget as well. If we just used our goals to build our budget and we way overshot our goals, we're not going to have very good budget sitting there, right? If our goal is to sell 40 cars a month and we end up selling 25 cars a month, we very well may go out of business. So make sure you're using the projections that you base on your historical data to produce that budget. And I said this earlier, but I'm going to say it again. Number three is projections should be used to set your goals. This is very, very important, because if you just willy-nilly make goals, then you're not going to succeed at those goals. If you don't succeed at those goals, you're going to probably get mad at yourself. So use your projections and use projections to make increases to hit those goals. Again, if we're advertising more, if we got more cars, maybe the goals are more realistic than the projections are. But if you're not using the two, you really won't know. Number four is super important. We've talked about this a lot, but you need to use your projections to allocate your resources. So if I know that I want to sell a certain amount of cars and that we're going to sell a certain amount of cars, my shop has to be geared up to do that. So I've got to allot the resource to make sure it happens. And if I sell a certain amount of cars and I know that I'm going to have this many cars for warranty and this many cars is also for recon, then I need to use those projections to make sure I've allocated my resources properly in the shop. Same with cash flow. Cash flow is big because if we know we're going to sell a certain amount of buy here, pay here cars is going to eat up this amount of cash, we better have cash reserves to meet that number so we can buy new inventory, pay our bills, etc. And the last thing here, when we talk about projections, we can use those as a crystal ball into the future of market changes. Markets change. And if you look from year to year to year to those projections and use all the historical data, we can predict what's probably coming. Now, you can't always predict this. I've said before, you can't predict COVID. You can't predict a hurricane. Not very far out anyway. So these are the things that you have to use. Use those projections to see market changes. You may see that, as I've seen, my ACV has climbed a lot. So I know I need to allocate more resources being more cash, to make sure I'm rolling out and make sure I can pay my bills and buy new inventory. So these are some things to look at when you talk about projections. These are some ways to make your projections tell the future, allocate resources, and do all the things that are going to make us better business people. Hopefully this helps. Look forward to seeing you next time.